The champagne flute slipped from my fingers in slow motion, crystal shattering against marble as I stood frozen in the entrance of the Waterfront Event Center. Ryan's hand was wrapped around her waist with the casual intimacy of 1,000 repeated gestures. His lips brushed her temple. She laughed at something he whispered, tilting her head back in a way that made her diamond necklace catch the light. A necklace identical to the one he'd given me 3 months ago for my birthday, calling it a one-of-a-kind piece that reminded him of me. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. But what made my knees buckle wasn't the necklace or even the intimate embrace. It was the woman standing next to them, holding a champagne glass and beaming with pride. Ryan's mother. The woman he'd told me lived in Boston and was too ill to travel. The woman I'd never met because of her delicate health and complicated family dynamics. She was vibrant, healthy, and clearly adoring as she watched her son with the brunette in the emerald dress who absolutely was not me. 3 years. 3 years of Friday date nights and Sunday morning pancakes. 3 years of meeting his coworkers at happy hours and attending his supposed work events. 3 years of planning our future, discussing wedding venues, and arguing about whether we'd name our first daughter Claire or Sophia. 3 years of being certain that Ryan Cooper was the person I'd spend my life with. The ballroom spun around me. Waitstaff glided past with silver trays. String quartet music floated through air thick with perfume and ambition. Everyone looked so elegant, so purposeful, so completely unaware that my entire existence had just been revealed as an elaborate fiction. I backed toward the door, my heel catching on the hem of the navy dress I'd bought specifically for this event. The dress, Ryan said, made my eyes look like storm clouds over the ocean. Did he say the same thing to her about that emerald dress? My name is Lauren Bennett, and until approximately 90 seconds ago, I thought I understood my life. I'm a graphic designer at a small creative agency in Portland. I live in a modest apartment in the Pearl District with plants I somehow keep alive and a cat named Hitchcock who judges my life choices. I pay my bills on time, call my parents every Sunday, and believed wholeheartedly in the power of honest communication and mutual respect in relationships. Ryan and I met at a mutual friend's barbecue in the summer heat of late July. He was charming without being overwhelming, funny without trying too hard, and he asked genuine questions about my work instead of just waiting for his turn to talk. Our first date lasted 7 hours, starting with coffee and ending with us splitting dessert at a tiny French bistro while discussing our shared obsession with true crime podcasts and terrible reality television. He kissed me goodnight on my doorstep with the kind of gentleness that made me believe in romance again after a string of disappointing dating app disasters. The relationship progressed naturally. He had a demanding job in tech sales that required frequent travel and long hours, which I respected because I understood career ambition. My own work often kept me at the office late, wrestling with client revisions and impossible deadlines. We carved out time for each other deliberately, protecting our Friday evenings and lazy Sunday mornings like sacred territory in our busy schedules. He kept clothes at my apartment. I had a toothbrush at his place across town in the Alberta Arts District, though he always preferred staying at mine, claiming my neighborhood had better breakfast options and my bed was more comfortable than his. There were small things that didn't quite add up if I'm being honest with myself now. The way he never wanted me to stop by his apartment unannounced. How his phone was always face down on surfaces, notifications silenced during our time together. The business trips that sometimes extended without much explanation. His reluctance to post photos of us on social media, claiming he preferred to keep his personal life private in an era of oversharing. But these seemed like reasonable preferences, maybe even mature boundaries, especially compared to my ex who documented our entire relationship online like a performance art project. Ryan's work life remained mostly separate from ours. He'd mentioned coworkers casually, told funny stories about office politics and client meetings, but kept that world at arm's length from our relationship. When I suggested meeting his team at a happy hour or company event, he'd explain that his workplace culture was intensely competitive and he didn't like mixing his professional and personal spheres. It would make things complicated, he'd said. People might treat him differently if they knew about his relationship status. I'd found this explanation acceptable, even somewhat principled. Then 3 weeks ago, Ryan mentioned his company's annual gala. A big formal event at the Waterfront Event Center where the executive team announced promotions and celebrated the year's successes. He seemed genuinely excited to finally introduce me to his colleagues, to have me by his side at this important professional milestone. He'd recently been promoted to senior account executive, and this gala represented his arrival in the company's upper ranks. He wanted me there, he said, because I was his partner and he was proud of what we'd built together. I'd been thrilled. After 3 years of keeping our relationship somewhat compartmentalized, this felt like a significant step forward. I bought the navy dress, spent more than I should have at the salon getting my hair styled, and practiced small talk topics that would make me seem charming but not overbearing when meeting his professional circle. My sister Casey helped me pick out understated jewelry and coached me on remembering names. This was important, we both agreed. This was Ryan publicly claiming our relationship in a space that mattered to him. The event was scheduled for 7 o'clock on a Friday evening. Ryan said he'd meet me there directly from a client meeting that would run late, texting me the address and telling me to go straight to the ballroom on the second floor. He'd find me as soon as he arrived. I got there at 7:15, fashionably late but not rudely so, clutching my small purse and rehearsing my introduction smile. The Waterfront Event Center was stunning, all floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Willamette River and the city lights beginning to glow in the October dusk. I checked my coat, smoothed my dress, and climbed the curved staircase to the second floor. Music and laughter spilled from open double doors. I walked in scanning the crowd for Ryan's familiar face and sandy hair. That's when I saw them. Ryan and the woman in emerald. His mother beside them. The tableau of a family unit I'd never been invited to join, existing in plain sight at an event he'd specifically invited me to attend. The cognitive dissonance was so extreme that my first thought was that I'd somehow gotten the wrong event, walked into someone else's work party. But the banner above the bar read Tech Vision Solutions Annual Gala, the exact company name Ryan had mentioned hundreds of times over 3 years. I'd backed out of the ballroom in a daze, my brain struggling to construct any narrative that made sense. Maybe she was a coworker and the intimacy I'd witnessed was a misunderstanding. Maybe his mother was there visiting him and happened to be at this event coincidentally. Maybe the necklace similarity was just unfortunate timing and poor taste. But even as I tried these explanations, they dissolved under the weight of what I'd seen. The comfort in their body language. The pride on his mother's face. The way they stood together like a unit that had existed far longer than an evening. I found myself in the parking lot without remembering the walk down the stairs. The October air was cold against my bare arms. I'd left my coat inside. My phone buzzed with a text from Ryan asking where I was, saying he'd just arrived and couldn't find me in the crowd. The audacity of that message, the casual deception of it, made something crack open inside my chest. I didn't respond. Instead, I called the one person who would know what to do. My sister Casey answered on the second ring, music thumping in the background of whatever bar she was at with friends. "Lauren? What's wrong? You sound weird. I need you to come get me." My voice sounded hollow, unfamiliar. "I'm at the Waterfront Event Center and I can't drive right now." "What happened? Are you hurt?" "Ryan has another girlfriend. Or I'm the other girlfriend. I don't know which one of us is real and which one is the lie, but his mother is here and she clearly knows the other woman and I think I might throw up in this parking lot." Casey's voice shifted immediately from concern to focused. "Stay right where you are. Don't move. Don't answer his calls. I'm leaving right now and I'll be there in 15 minutes. She made it in 12. I was sitting on a concrete parking barrier when her car pulled up, still in my expensive dress and salon hair, looking like someone who'd been stood up at prom. She draped her jacket over my shoulders and guided me into the passenger seat without asking questions, just driving us back toward my apartment while I stared out the window at the city lights blurring past. "Tell me everything," she said quietly once we were inside my apartment. Hitchcock wound around my ankles, sensing distress the way cats somehow do. I changed into sweatpants and an old college hoodie while Casey made tea neither of us would drink. The story spilled out in fragments. 3 years of relationship. the separate worlds Ryan maintained. Tonight's gala invitation that had seemed like progress. Walking into that ballroom to find him with someone else, comfortable and established and surrounded by family I'd been told didn't exist in accessible form. The identical necklace that now felt like a sick joke about my own significance in his life. Casey listened without interrupting, her expression growing darker with each detail. When I finished, she sat back against my couch cushions and was quiet for a long moment. "Lauren, I need to tell you something and you're not going to like it." I laughed, a brittle sound. "I don't think this night can get worse." 6 months ago, I saw Ryan at Powell's Books with a woman. They were in the travel section looking at guides for Hawaii, laughing and planning what looked like a trip. I almost came over to say hi, but something about their body language made me pause. They were standing too close, too familiar. When they kissed before separating to different sections, I convinced myself I'd been mistaken about who I'd seen. It was crowded and I was across the store. I told myself it couldn't have been Ryan because you would have mentioned a Hawaii trip. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. My stomach dropped. We never went to Hawaii. He went on a work conference in Maui last spring and I stayed home because the dates conflicted with a major client presentation. Casey's face confirmed what I was thinking. "I'm so sorry. I should have said something then, but I rationalized it away. I thought maybe I was wrong about what I saw, and I didn't want to blow up your relationship over a potential misidentification. But now, after what you just told me, I don't think I was wrong at all." The betrayal expanded, stretching back through time and recoloring memories I'd thought were solid. How long had this been happening? Who was the other woman? How many lies had I accepted as truth while building a future in my imagination that was never going to exist? My phone had been buzzing continuously since I'd left the event center. 17 missed calls from Ryan. Dozens of texts progressing from confused to concerned to irritated. "Where are you? Did something happen? I'm worried. This is getting ridiculous, just tell me what's going on." The entitlement in that last message, the suggestion that I was being unreasonable, made anger finally pierce through the shock. "Don't answer him," Casey said, watching me stare at the phone. "Not yet. First, we need to figure out what's actually happening here. We need information before you confront him, or he'll just spin whatever story seems most convenient." "How do we get information?" Casey's expression shifted into something I'd seen before when she was solving complex problems at her data analyst job. "Leave that to me. Just give me access to anything you have. Passwords he might use, details about his life, anything that could give me a starting point." "What are you going to do?" "Research." Casey opened her laptop with the determined efficiency of someone preparing for battle. "And I'm going to find out exactly who Ryan Cooper really is." Over the next 3 hours, Casey worked with an intensity I'd rarely witnessed. She started with basic social media investigation, but Ryan's profiles were sparse and carefully curated. Then she moved into more sophisticated territory, using professional databases and people search tools I didn't know existed. She cross-referenced addresses, employment records, and public information with the casual expertise of someone who did this kind of digital investigation professionally. "Lauren, what's Ryan's middle name?" "James. Ryan James Cooper." "Birth date?" "March 14, 1994. Her fingers flew across the keyboard. "Do you know where he went to college?" "University of Washington. Computer science degree." Casey pulled up records, compared data points, and slowly began building a picture that made my earlier shock seem quaint. Around midnight, she turned her laptop toward me with an expression of carefully controlled fury. "His name is on a marriage license filed in King County, Washington." The document glowed on the screen, official and undeniable. Ryan James Cooper married Vanessa Catherine Pierce on June 8, 2021. I stared at the date. June 2021. We'd been dating for almost a year by then. I'd spent that entire month helping him prepare for what he'd called a major career transition, bringing him meals during late work nights and supporting him through what he described as a stressful professional period. He'd been stressed, apparently, because he was planning a wedding to someone who wasn't me. "There's more," Casey said gently. "Property records show they own a house together in Lake Oswego. Purchased 14 months ago." The address matched nothing I'd ever associated with Ryan. What about his apartment in Alberta Arts District? The place he'd claimed was his, but that I'd only visited a handful of times? Casey searched the address I provided. "It's a rental property owned by someone else. Ryan's name isn't on any lease or ownership documents for that location. If I had to guess, it's probably a place he keeps as a cover story. Somewhere to maintain the illusion when necessary." The architecture of deception was staggering. This wasn't a casual affair or a recent lapse in judgment. This was systematic, deliberate, sustained fraud spanning years. Ryan had constructed an entirely fictional version of his life and presented it to me as reality, while simultaneously maintaining his actual existence with a wife I'd never known existed. My phone buzzed again. Ryan's name. I didn't answer, but this time I read the preview of his message. "I don't know what game you're playing, but I deserve an explanation. You embarrassed me tonight by not showing up after I specifically invited you. This is incredibly disrespectful and we need to talk immediately." The gaslighting was almost impressive in its audacity. He was angry at me for leaving an event where I discovered his double life. He was demanding respect while having shown me none for 3 years. He was positioning himself as the injured party in a situation he'd engineered entirely. Casey read the message over my shoulder and made a disgusted sound. "Don't respond to that manipulation. We're not done collecting information yet." "What else is there?" Casey's smile was cold. "Everything. By the time we confront him, we're going to know more about Ryan Cooper's life than he remembers himself. And then we're going to decide exactly how this ends." She opened multiple windows, accessed databases I didn't recognize, and settled in for what was clearly going to be a long night of investigation. I sat beside her, watching my entire relationship transform from cherished memories into evidence of prolonged deception, and realized that the woman I'd been this morning was gone forever. Whatever came next, I would be someone different. Someone who'd learned that love without verification was just another word for foolishness. Casey worked through the night with the methodical precision of a surgeon, her fingers dancing across the keyboard while I sat curled in the corner of my couch, wrapped in a blanket and trying to process information that kept reshaping my understanding of reality. Hitchcock had claimed my lap, purring with the oblivious contentment of a creature whose biggest concern was whether his food bowl would be refilled on schedule. Around 2 a.m, Casey pulled up financial records that made my breath catch. Ryan and Vanessa had joint credit cards showing charges at restaurants I recognized. Places Ryan had taken me, claiming they were new discoveries or hidden gems only locals knew about. The Italian place on Hawthorne where he'd told me the owner recognized him because he came there for business lunches. The wine bar in the Pearl District where we'd celebrated my promotion last spring. He'd cycled through the same locations with both of us, probably enjoying the efficiency of not having to research new date spots. There were charges for hotels in Seattle, San Francisco, and Vancouver. Trips that coincided exactly with the work conferences Ryan had told me about, except the hotel names didn't match the conference venues he'd mentioned. When Casey cross-referenced the dates, we found that the actual Tech Vision Solutions conferences had been held at completely different properties. Ryan had been taking Vanessa on romantic getaways while telling me he was networking and attending professional development seminars. The travel charges painted a picture of a marriage that was active and engaged, not the separated or troubled relationship I'd imagined when trying to rationalize what I'd seen at the gala. These were people who took weekend trips to the Oregon coast, who spent money on anniversary dinners and couple spa packages. The most recent charge was from just 2 weeks ago at a bed and breakfast in Cannon Beach. During the same weekend Ryan had told me he needed space to deal with a family emergency involving his supposedly ailing mother in Boston. "Look at this," Casey said, turning the laptop toward me again. She'd pulled up Vanessa's social media profiles, which were far more active than Ryan's carefully sanitized accounts. The privacy settings were moderately restrictive, but Casey had found ways to view cached versions and public posts that revealed significant information. Vanessa Pierce Cooper, according to her Facebook profile, was a marketing director at a pharmaceutical company. Her Instagram showed a curated life of brunch photos, hiking adventures, and home renovation projects. There were pictures of a beautiful craftsman house with a green door and window boxes full of flowers. The Lake Oswego property Casey had found in the records. Many photos featured a golden retriever named Bentley, who apparently enjoyed swimming in the Willamette River and stealing socks from the laundry basket. And there was Ryan. Not in every photo, but enough to establish a clear narrative. Ryan grilling on a back deck. Ryan and Vanessa at what looked like a wedding, both dressed formally and smiling. Ryan holding Bentley as a puppy with the caption, "Our family is complete." The photos dated back years, creating a timeline that overlapped entirely with our relationship. While I'd been building what I thought was our life together, Vanessa had been documenting her actual life with Ryan in public view. How did I never see these? I asked, my voice cracking. Her account is set so only friends can see most posts, Casey explained. These are from periods when her privacy settings were less strict, or from posts that friends shared publicly. But look at the comments. Family members, coworkers, college friends all interacting with this content like it's completely normal. Because for them, it is normal. Vanessa isn't hiding her relationship with Ryan. She has no idea you exist. That realization hit differently than everything else. I was the secret, not her. She was the legitimate wife living her life openly while I was the hidden compartment in Ryan's existence, carefully concealed from anyone who might connect the dots. She posted photos of her husband at family gatherings and neighborhood barbecues. I had been asked repeatedly not to post couple photos because Ryan valued privacy. Casey found Vanessa's wedding registry from their 2021 marriage. They'd registered at Crate and Barrel and Williams-Sonoma, asking for kitchen equipment and home goods. Practical items for building a life together. I remembered that summer clearly. Ryan had been distant for a few weeks, claiming work stress and family issues. Then he'd returned to our relationship with renewed attention, taking me on elaborate dates and talking about our future with an intensity that had felt romantic at the time. Now I understood he'd been managing guilt or perhaps just ensuring I stayed invested while he married someone else. The registry listed Vanessa's parents as hosts. Robert and Diana Pierce from Lake Oswego. Casey tracked down their social media profiles too, finding photos from the wedding. A beautiful outdoor ceremony at a vineyard in the Willamette Valley. Vanessa in an elegant lace gown. Ryan in a gray suit, smiling with genuine happiness. His mother was there in the photos, the same woman I'd seen at the gala, wearing a corsage and beaming in family portraits. There were siblings too, both Ryan's and Vanessa's, all gathered to celebrate a union I'd known nothing about while it was happening. I need to know who else knew, I said quietly. Did his coworkers know about both of us? Was I the running joke at his office? Casey navigated to LinkedIn, pulling up profiles for people who worked at TechVision Solutions. She found several connections to Ryan, people who'd endorsed his skills and shared professional updates. Then she found Tyler Morrison, someone Ryan had mentioned casually a few times as a work friend. Tyler's profile showed he'd been at TechVision for 5 years, overlapping significantly with Ryan's tenure. I'm going to reach out to him, Casey said. Not confrontationally. Just as someone trying to understand the situation. What will you say? That I'm helping my sister who was involved with Ryan Cooper and we're trying to get clarity on some confusing circumstances. If Tyler is decent, he'll respond honestly. If he's loyal to Ryan, he'll probably ignore the message or warn Ryan we're digging. Either way, we learned something. She drafted a careful message and sent it through LinkedIn's messaging system. Then she continued excavating Ryan's digital footprint, finding voter registration records, property tax payments, and utility bills that all painted the same picture. Ryan James Cooper was a married man living in Lake Oswego with his wife Vanessa, their dog Bentley, and a mortgage that required both incomes to support. The apartment in Alberta Arts District remained a mystery until Casey found a rental listing from 3 years ago. The unit had been available as a short-term corporate housing option, month-to-month leases for business travelers or people in transition. Ryan had likely rented it specifically to maintain the illusion of independent living when I needed to believe he had his own space. The few times I'd been there, it had felt sterile and impersonal, lacking the lived-in quality of a real home. Because it wasn't a real home. It was a stage set for performing a fake life. My phone continued buzzing periodically through the night with messages from Ryan that shifted in tone from demanding to conciliatory to concerned. He was cycling through manipulation tactics, trying to find one that would make me respond. "Baby, I'm worried about you. This isn't like you to just disappear. Whatever I did to upset you, we can talk about it. Communication is the foundation of our relationship, remember?" The hypocrisy of that last sentence was staggering coming from someone who'd hidden a wife for 3 years. Casey glanced at the messages and shook her head. Classic manipulation cycle. Make you feel guilty for having a reaction to his behavior. Don't engage yet. We need to be fully armed with information before any confrontation happens. Around 4 a.m, Casey found something that shifted our investigation in a new direction. A blog post from 2 years ago on a wedding planning website. Vanessa had written a detailed recap of her wedding, complete with vendor recommendations and budget breakdowns for other brides planning vineyard ceremonies. The post was cheerful and thorough, describing how she and Ryan had met through mutual friends, dated for 3 years before he proposed during a trip to Crater Lake, and planned their dream wedding while juggling demanding careers. 3 years of dating before marriage. That timeline meant Ryan had started dating Vanessa around the same time he'd started dating me. We weren't sequential relationships where he'd failed to disclose a messy separation. We were parallel relationships he'd maintained simultaneously from the beginning. Everything had always been a lie. There had never been a version of Ryan who was genuinely mine. The blog post included acknowledgments thanking family members and wedding party participants. Ryan's best man was listed as Marcus Chin, described as his college roommate and closest friend. Casey tracked down Marcus on social media, finding a profile filled with gym photos and hiking adventures. His relationship status showed he was married to someone named Priya. They lived in Seattle. "I remember Ryan mentioning Marcus," I said. "He told me they'd grown apart after college and barely kept in touch anymore." According to Marcus's recent posts, he and Ryan went skiing together in February, Casey countered. "There's a whole photo set from Mount Bachelor with Ryan tagged in several shots. They're definitely still close. Ryan just didn't want you meeting people who knew about Vanessa." Every lie revealed another lie beneath it, a nested structure of deception that went deeper than I'd imagined possible. Ryan hadn't just hidden a wife. He'd constructed an entirely fictional reality, complete with fabricated backstories about his relationships, his living situation, his family circumstances, and his day-to-day life. The person I thought I knew simply did not exist. As dawn started breaking outside my apartment windows, Casey leaned back from her laptop and rubbed her eyes. "We have enough information for you to confront him with undeniable facts. The question is how you want to handle this. You could just ghost him, block his number, and move on. You could confront him privately and get whatever satisfaction comes from watching him try to explain. Or we could expose him publicly, make sure Vanessa knows what her husband has been doing." The thought of Vanessa finding out made my stomach twist with complicated emotions. She was the legitimate wife. She was the one who'd been betrayed in the traditional sense. But I'd also been betrayed, my time and trust and emotional investments stolen through deliberate fraud. We were both victims of the same person, even if our positions in his life were fundamentally different. "I need to talk to her," I said. "Vanessa deserves to know. And I need to hear from her whether she had any idea I existed. I need to know if I was the only one living in ignorance." Casey nodded slowly. "That's fair. But you should be prepared for the possibility that confronting her might not go the way you expect. People react unpredictably when their worldview gets shattered. She might deny everything, or blame you instead of Ryan, or accuse you of lying. Finding out your husband has a whole other relationship isn't information people typically process rationally. I understand. But keeping this secret to protect Ryan's comfort feels wrong. He doesn't deserve that protection." "Agreed. So we need a plan." We need to approach this strategically so he can't manipulate the narrative or convince Vanessa that you're some unhinged person making false accusations. Over the next hour, as the city began waking up outside and Hitchcock demanded his breakfast with increasing volume, Casey and I developed a plan. We would compile all the evidence into a clear timeline. Photos, receipts, messages, everything that proved both relationships had existed simultaneously. Then we would reach out to Vanessa directly, not through Ryan, and present the information in a way that was factual rather than emotional. We would give her the evidence and let her make her own decisions about what to do with her marriage. But first, we needed to understand more about Vanessa herself. Was she someone who would want to know the truth? Was she someone who might already suspect something and be relieved to finally have confirmation? Or was she someone so invested in her marriage that she'd reject any information that threatened it? Casey found a professional email address for Vanessa through her company's website. Marketing directors typically had public contact information for media inquiries and business communications. We debated the ethics of reaching out to her at work but ultimately decided it was better than showing up at her home or trying to corner her in public. An email gave her space to process privately and respond when she was ready. Drafting that email took most of the morning. How do you tell a stranger that her husband has been maintaining a secret relationship? How do you prove you're telling the truth without sounding like you're attacking her personally? We went through dozens of versions, trying to find language that was clear and kind but didn't minimize the seriousness of what we were revealing. The final version was straightforward. It introduced me as someone who'd been in a relationship with Ryan Cooper for 3 years. It acknowledged that this information would be shocking and potentially unwelcome. It offered to share evidence if she wanted proof but didn't demand anything from her. It included my phone number and email address so she could respond if she chose to, and it ended with an apology for being the person to disrupt her life with this information. Casey read it over one final time and nodded. This is good. It's respectful but honest. If I were Vanessa, this is the kind of message I'd want to receive in this situation. My finger hovered over the send button. Once I pressed it, there would be no taking it back. Vanessa's life would change. My relationship with Ryan, whatever twisted form it had taken, would be irrevocably over. The future I'd imagined would be officially dead rather than just mortally wounded. I pressed send. The email disappeared into the digital void, carrying with it the destruction of Ryan's carefully constructed lies. Casey and I sat in silence for a moment, processing what we just set in motion. Now we wait, Casey said. And while we wait, we prepare for Ryan's reaction. Because once Vanessa contacts him, or if she decides to investigate on her own, he's going to know we're onto him. And men like Ryan don't handle exposure well. What do you think he'll do? Deny everything at first. Then probably try to convince you that Vanessa is the side relationship or that their marriage is over and he was waiting for the right time to tell you. He'll say whatever he thinks will work. The key is not engaging with his attempts to control the narrative. My phone buzzed. Another message from Ryan. I'm coming to your apartment. We need to talk about last night and your bizarre behavior. I'll be there in an hour. Casey saw the message and her expression hardened. Don't let him in. If he shows up, you don't answer the door. You don't owe him access to your space or your time. He's had 3 years of access built on lies. That privilege is revoked. What if he makes a scene? My neighbors will hear. Then they hear. Let them witness exactly what kind of person he is. You're not responsible for managing his emotions or protecting his image anymore. The hour passed slowly. Casey stayed with me, both of us watching the door like it might explode inward. Right on schedule, there was loud knocking. Casey looked through the peephole and confirmed it was Ryan before stepping back and shaking her head at me. Lauren, open the door. His voice was muffled but clearly agitated. I know you're in there. Your car is in the parking lot. This is childish. We need to talk like adults. I said nothing, remaining perfectly still on my couch while Hitchcock hid under the bed, sensing tension. The knocking continued for several minutes. Ryan's voice escalated. You can't avoid me forever. Whatever you think happened last night, you're clearly confused. I can explain everything if you just let me in. This silent treatment is manipulative and unfair. Casey rolled her eyes at the projection. He was calling my silence manipulative while having maintained an elaborate double life for years. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the knocking stopped. Casey checked the peephole and reported that Ryan was gone, though his car remained in the parking lot for another 20 minutes before finally leaving. He'll try again, Casey predicted. Through different channels. He'll text your friends asking if you're okay. He'll try to make you seem like the unreasonable one for not engaging. Just keep documenting everything. Every message, every attempt at contact. It all becomes part of the record. Around noon, my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. Portland area code. I let it go to voicemail, then listened with Casey beside me. Hello, this is Vanessa Cooper. I received your email this morning and I would very much like to speak with you. I'm at work right now, but I could meet you this evening if you're available. Please call me back at this number. There was a pause, then her voice came back quieter, almost breaking. I need to understand what's happening. Casey and I looked at each other. This was really happening. The confrontation we'd planned was about to become real. I'll go with you, Casey said immediately. You don't have to face this alone. I called Vanessa back, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. She answered on the first ring. Thank you for calling back. Her voice was controlled, but I could hear the tension underneath. I'm trying to process your email and I have a lot of questions. Can we meet somewhere neutral? Maybe the Brew and Bloom Cafe on Alberta Street at 6 o'clock. That was my best friend Nina's coffee shop, coincidentally. A place I'd been dozens of times, comfortable and familiar. I agreed to the time and location. I'll see you then, Vanessa said. And please bring whatever evidence you mentioned. I need to see proof of what you're claiming. After we hung up, I texted Nina explaining that I needed to use her cafe for a difficult conversation and asking if she could make sure we had a private corner table. Nina responded immediately with concern and support, promising to set aside the back booth and give us privacy. The hours until 6 o'clock stretched interminably. Casey helped me organize all our findings into a clear presentation on my laptop. Photos of Ryan and me together with timestamps. Screenshots of his messages over 3 years. Receipts from dates and gifts. The marriage license showing his wedding to Vanessa. Credit card statements showing his double life. Everything compiled into undeniable proof that both relationships had existed simultaneously. We arrived at Brew and Bloom 15 minutes early. Nina had cleared the back corner as promised, setting up the booth with tea service and closing off the nearby tables with reserved signs. She hugged me without asking questions, just squeezing my hand and promising she was nearby if I needed anything. Vanessa arrived exactly at 6. I recognized her immediately from the photos, though seeing her in person carried different weight. She was beautiful in an effortless way, wearing business casual clothes that suggested she'd come straight from work. Her eyes were red-rimmed like she'd been crying, but her composure was intact. Lauren? She asked, approaching our table. I nodded. This is my sister Casey. We all sat down in awkward silence. Vanessa folded her hands on the table, and I noticed her wedding ring. A simple platinum band paired with a modest diamond. Real and legal and representing vows I'd watched her husband violate repeatedly. Show me, Vanessa said simply. Show me everything. I opened my laptop and turned the screen toward Vanessa. Casey sat beside me silently, a supportive presence as I began walking through the timeline we'd compiled. The first image was from 3 years ago, Ryan and me at that summer barbecue where we'd met. His arm around my shoulders, both of us sunburned and laughing. The timestamp showed clearly in the corner of the photo. Vanessa stared at the image for a long moment. That's the weekend he told me he was visiting his college friend in Eugene. Her voice was flat, emotionless in a way that suggested she was holding herself together through sheer force of will. I scrolled to the next series of photos. Our first official date at the French bistro. A selfie from a hiking trip to Silver Falls. Pictures from my birthday dinner where Ryan had given me the necklace I now understood wasn't unique at all. Each image had a date stamp, creating an irrefutable record of our relationship's progression. Vanessa pulled out her own phone with trembling hands. She scrolled through her photos and turned the screen toward me. Ryan and her at what appeared to be a wine-tasting event. The date was 2 days after my birthday dinner. She swiped to another photo. Their trip to the coast. The same weekend he'd told me he was at a conference in San Diego. We sat in silence, both of us scrolling through our respective photo libraries and finding overlap after overlap. Every trip he'd taken with me, he'd balanced with a trip with her. Every holiday he'd celebrated with me, he'd also celebrated with her, sometimes just days apart. He'd given us both Christmas gifts last year. Valentine's Day flowers. Anniversary acknowledgements, though our anniversaries were obviously different dates requiring him to celebrate 2 separate milestones. How long? Vanessa asked. Her composure was cracking around the edges. How long have you been seeing my husband? 3 years. I met him in July at a mutual friend's party. He told me he worked in tech sales, lived in Alberta Arts District, and was focused on his career. He never mentioned being married. He never mentioned you at all. 3 years. Vanessa's voice broke on the repetition. We've been married for 4 years. Together for 7 total. The entire time we were engaged, he was already seeing you. The entire first year of our marriage, he was building a relationship with you. I didn't know, I said quietly. I swear I had no idea you existed until last night when I saw him with you at the gala. He told me his mother was too ill to travel from Boston. When I saw her there, healthy and clearly knowing you, that's when I realized something was fundamentally wrong. Vanessa laughed, a bitter sound that held no humor. His mother lives 20 minutes from our house. She comes over for Sunday dinner twice a month. She helped us paint the nursery last year when we thought I was pregnant. Her hands clenched around her phone. We've been trying to have a baby for 18 months. Going to fertility appointments and tracking ovulation and doing everything the doctors suggested. And the whole time he was maintaining another entire relationship. The revelation about fertility treatments hit me with unexpected force. Ryan had told me he wasn't sure about kids, that he wanted to focus on our careers first and revisit the conversation in a few years. Another lie to keep his 2 lives separate and manageable. With Vanessa, he was actively trying to become a father. With me, he was postponing the discussion indefinitely. Casey reached across the table and pushed a box of tissues toward Vanessa, who took one and pressed it against her eyes. When she lowered her hands, her expression had shifted from shock to something harder. Tell me about the apartment in Alberta Arts District. Do you have a key? I used to, but I only went there a handful of times over 3 years. He always preferred staying at my place. He said my neighborhood had better restaurants and my apartment was more comfortable. Now I understand he was minimizing the chances I'd discover something that didn't fit his story. Vanessa nodded slowly, pieces clicking into place in her mind. He told me that apartment was a corporate rental his company maintained for clients visiting from out of town. He said he had access to it for work purposes. I never questioned it because why would I? I trusted my husband. Casey cleared her throat gently. I found rental records for that unit. It's been registered to Ryan personally for the past 3 years, month-to-month lease. He's been paying for it separately from your household expenses. The utility bills are in his name alone. Vanessa pulled up something on her phone, scrolling through what appeared to be banking records. I never saw those payments because he has a separate account he told me was for work expenses. Entertainment budgets for client dinners and travel reimbursements that hadn't processed yet. She laughed that bitter laugh again. I'm a marketing director. I understand how corporate expenses work. But I believed him because you don't expect your husband to maintain secret bank accounts funding a double life. I showed her the messages Ryan had sent me over the years. Good morning texts and good night calls. Photos he'd sent from business trips, most of which I now suspected were actually personal trips with Vanessa disguised as work travel. Long conversations about our future together, plans we'd made, dreams we'd shared. Vanessa read through them with growing fury. He sent you the same good morning text he sends me. Word for word. Look. She held up her phone showing messages from Ryan that were identical to ones he'd sent me, just on different days. He's been copying and pasting his affection between us like we're both just items on a task list. The efficiency of his deception was almost more insulting than the deception itself. Ryan hadn't even bothered to customize his lies, instead recycling the same phrases and gestures between us. We were interchangeable components in his fantasy of having multiple lives, neither of us valued enough to warrant original effort. Casey pulled up the financial records she'd compiled. Credit card statements showing charges at restaurants both Vanessa and I recognized. Hotel bookings during weekends both of us could account for in our memories. Purchases at jewelry stores that had produced gifts for both of us. He bought you a necklace for your birthday, Vanessa said, touching her throat where a delicate chain rested. He bought me the same one for our anniversary 3 months later. Told me he'd searched everywhere for something unique that represented our relationship. The shared necklace felt emblematic of everything else. Ryan had found a piece he liked and simply purchased multiples, giving them to both of us with identical speeches about uniqueness and meaning. We'd both worn them thinking we were special, not realizing we were part of a bulk order. Nina appeared at our table with a fresh pot of tea and a plate of pastries nobody had ordered. She didn't say anything, just refreshed our cups and squeezed my shoulder before disappearing back behind the counter. The kindness of the gesture made tears burn in my eyes. I need to understand his logistics, Vanessa said, her voice shifting into something more analytical. How did he manage the timing? How did he keep us from finding out about each other for so long? Casey had actually mapped this out during her research. He used his work schedule as cover. Both of you knew he traveled frequently and worked irregular hours. That flexibility gave him room to manipulate his availability without raising suspicion. When he told you he was working late, he was probably with Vanessa. When he told Vanessa he had client dinners or conferences, he was probably with you. But we have dinner together most nights, Vanessa protested. He comes home to me. That's his primary residence. He told me Fridays and Sundays were our dedicated time together, I explained. He said he worked late every other weeknight and preferred to keep weekends structured. Friday was date night for us. Sunday mornings we'd make breakfast together at my place. The rest of the week, he'd say he was busy with work or needed personal space to recharge from his demanding job. Vanessa pulled up a calendar on her phone. Fridays he told me he had standing client meetings that ran late. Team building dinners he couldn't skip. He'd come home around midnight, claiming he was exhausted from entertaining clients. Sundays he goes to the gym early and runs errands. Says he needs a few hours alone to prepare for the work week. Usually gets home around noon. The precision of his scheduling was remarkable. Ryan had carved out specific blocks of time for each of us, maintaining consistency in his availability patterns so neither of us would notice irregularities. He'd turned relationship management into a project plan, allocating resources and managing deliverables across multiple stakeholders. What about holidays? Casey asked. That must have been complicated. Christmas morning I spent with Ryan at my apartment, I said. He told me he had to drive to Boston that afternoon to see his mother. He left around 2 o'clock. He came home at 3 o'clock and told me he'd finished his morning workout early, Vanessa said. We spent Christmas afternoon and evening together. Opened presents, made dinner, watched movies. It was perfect. The coordination required for that deception was staggering. Ryan had essentially worked 2 holiday shifts, celebrating with each of us separately while making both relationships feel complete. He'd managed gift shopping, meal planning, and emotional performance twice over, never slipping up or mixing up details between us. Vanessa scrolled through her phone with increasing agitation. Last year on my birthday, he took me to that new steakhouse downtown. Made a big romantic gesture out of it. When was your birthday? March. He took me to the same restaurant exactly 3 weeks before your birthday dinner. Of course he did. Vanessa set her phone down hard on the table. Why bother researching 2 different restaurants when you can just recycle the same date? Did he give you the same speech about how the sunset view from our table was the most beautiful in Portland? Word for word, I confirmed. He also told me the sommelier recognized him and gave us special treatment because he was a regular customer. He's not a regular customer, Vanessa said. That was the first and only time he's taken me there. Which means it was probably his second time total, once with you and once with me. Even his claims about being a regular were fabricated to make the gesture seem more significant. Casey had been taking notes while Vanessa and I compared experiences. She looked up from her laptop with a grim expression. Based on everything you've both shared, Ryan has been working roughly 60 to 70 hours per week just managing 2 relationships. That doesn't include his actual job. When did he sleep? Vanessa and I looked at each other, the same realization dawning simultaneously. He was always tired. Constantly exhausted but pushing through. I'd attributed it to his demanding career and supported him by not adding pressure about spending more time together. Now I understood his exhaustion came from literally living 2 complete lives simultaneously. He fell asleep constantly, Vanessa said. During movies, while reading, sometimes even during conversations. I thought he was working too hard and needed better work-life balance. I'd encourage him to slow down, to prioritize his health. He'd promised to do better and then nothing would change. Same experience here, I added. He'd fall asleep on my couch within minutes of sitting down. I bought him vitamins and suggested he see a doctor about possible health issues causing his fatigue. He'd brush it off, say it was just a stressful period at work that would get better soon. The fatigue was probably the only genuine thing about him, Casey observed. You can't fake exhaustion when you're literally trying to be in 2 places at once for 3 years straight. His body was breaking down under the strain of his lies. Vanessa leaned back in the booth, her expression distant as she processed everything. I keep trying to find a moment where I should have known. A red flag I missed or an inconsistency I ignored. But he was so careful. Every explanation made sense in isolation. It's only now, seeing the full picture with your perspective added, that the truth becomes obvious. That's what skilled liars do, Casey said. They don't just create false stories. They anticipate questions and build in plausible details that address potential doubts before they form. Ryan has been managing information like it's his full-time job, which essentially it has been. My phone buzzed on the table. Another message from Ryan. This one was different in tone from the earlier demanding texts. Baby, I don't know what's going on but I'm worried sick. Please just tell me you're okay. Whatever happened at the gala, we can work through it. I love you and nothing else matters except making sure you're safe. Vanessa's phone buzzed almost simultaneously. She glanced at the screen and her jaw tightened. He just texted me too. Saying he's going to be late coming home tonight because of an emergency client situation. Asking what I want him to pick up for dinner on his way home. The parallel messaging was almost funny in its audacity. Ryan was simultaneously playing concerned boyfriend to me and reliable husband to Vanessa, managing both roles without apparent shame or hesitation. He has no idea we're talking to each other right now, I said. He thinks he can still control both narratives separately. Vanessa's expression shifted into something cold and determined. Then let's keep it that way for now. Let him think he's still in control while we figure out exactly how we want to handle this. What are you thinking? Casey asked. I'm thinking that Ryan has spent 3 years manipulating both of us with careful planning and strategic deception. Vanessa's voice was steady now, shock giving way to anger and purpose. I'm thinking it's time we return the favor. But we need to be smarter about it than just confronting him directly. Men like Ryan are expert manipulators. If we give him warning, he'll just construct new lies to explain everything away. Casey nodded approvingly. Agreed. Right now he's scattered, trying to manage Lauren's sudden absence without knowing what she knows. He's making mistakes. Those demanding texts earlier showed poor emotional control. He's vulnerable in a way he probably hasn't been throughout this entire deception. So what's the plan? I asked, feeling something shift inside me from victim to something more active and intentional. Vanessa thought for a moment, then pulled out a small notebook from her purse and began writing. We need to gather more information first. Not just about the double relationship, but about anything else he might be hiding. Financial discrepancies, other potential affairs, work performance issues, anything that gives us leverage and protection. Casey opened a new document on her laptop. I can continue the digital investigation. Bank records, credit reports, employment verification. If there are other secrets beyond the two of you, I'll find them. I'll handle the social investigation, Vanessa said. I'll talk to his coworkers, his friends, his family. Not confrontationally, just casual questions that might reveal inconsistencies. If other people suspected something or noticed strange behavior, I want to know about it. What do I do? I asked, feeling useless in this planning session. You maintain the status quo with Ryan, Casey said. Don't confront him yet. Respond to his messages but stay vague. Tell him you're not feeling well and need some space. Keep him uncertain but not panicked. The longer he thinks he might salvage the situation with you, the less likely he is to do something desperate. Vanessa added her own instructions. Document everything from this point forward. Every conversation, every message, every interaction. We're building a case, even if it's not a legal one. When we do finally confront him, I want the evidence to be so overwhelming that he can't wiggle out with more lies. We spent the next hour developing a detailed strategy. Casey would dig deeper into Ryan's finances, looking for unexplained expenses or hidden accounts. Vanessa would casually investigate his social circles, asking questions disguised as normal relationship curiosity. I would maintain minimal contact with Ryan, buying us time without completely cutting him off and triggering defensive action. Nina came by our table as the cafe was preparing to close for the evening. She'd clearly been giving us privacy but now needed to start cleaning up. We gathered our things, exchanging phone numbers and promising to stay in close contact. Before we parted ways in the parking lot, Vanessa turned to me with an expression I couldn't quite read. I want you to know that I don't blame you for any of this. You didn't know he was married. You're as much a victim of his manipulation as I am. The words should have been comforting, but they highlighted the fundamental difference between us. She was the legal wife. I was the other woman, regardless of my ignorance. Our positions weren't equivalent, even if our pain was similar. Thank you, I managed. I'm sorry this happened. I'm sorry he did this to both of us. We didn't choose this, Vanessa said. He did. So let's make sure he's the one who pays the consequences, not us. Casey and I drove back to my apartment in silence. The adrenaline of the meeting was wearing off, leaving me hollowed out and exhausted. When we got inside, I collapsed on my couch while Casey made tea neither of us would drink, a ritual of normalcy in an abnormal situation. How are you feeling? She asked, sitting beside me. I don't know. Numb, maybe. Angry. Sad. Vindicated that I wasn't crazy for feeling like something was wrong, but also stupid for not figuring it out sooner. You're not stupid. Casey's voice was firm. You trusted someone who worked very hard to be trustworthy. That's not a character flaw on your part. That's what normal people do in relationships. My phone buzzed again. Ryan, of course. Lauren, please. I don't understand what's happening. Did I do something at the gala that upset you? Did someone say something about me? Just talk to me. This silence is killing me. Casey read the message over my shoulder. He's getting more desperate. That's good. Desperate people make mistakes. I typed out a response following the plan we developed with Vanessa. I'm not feeling well. Need some time alone to think. I'll reach out when I'm ready to talk. The message was vague enough to keep him uncertain while buying us investigation time. His response came within seconds. Are you sick? Do you need anything? I can bring you soup or medicine. Just tell me what you need. The performance of care would have been touching if I didn't now understand it was completely hollow. Ryan didn't actually care about my well-being. He cared about maintaining his access to me, keeping his double life functional and balanced. I'm fine. Just need space. I sent the message and then, following Casey's advice, muted his notifications so I wouldn't be tempted to keep engaging. Casey set up camp on my couch that night, refusing to leave me alone. We watched mindless television while she continued her digital investigation on her laptop, occasionally showing me discoveries that added depth to our understanding of Ryan's deception. Around midnight, she found something significant. Ryan had a storage unit across town, rented under his name alone and paid for through that separate bank account Vanessa had mentioned. The monthly charges went back almost 3 years. What do you think he's storing there? I asked. Could be anything. Extra clothes for quick changes between his 2 lives. Gifts he bought but hasn't given yet. Documents he doesn't want either of you finding. Maybe evidence of other relationships we don't know about yet. The possibility of additional women hadn't occurred to me, but Casey was right. If Ryan could maintain 2 complete relationships simultaneously, who was to say there weren't 3 or 4? Maybe Vanessa and I were just the ones he'd invested the most time in, with other casual relationships scattered around the edges. We need to get into that storage unit, Casey said. See what he's hiding. How? We don't have a key and I assume it's locked. Casey smiled, the expression reminding me of when we were kids and she was plotting something technically against the rules but ultimately harmless. Leave that to me. I have some friends who specialize in physical security. By this time tomorrow, we'll know exactly what Ryan Cooper is hiding in his secret storage unit. Casey's friend turned out to be a locksmith named Graham who specialized in helping people access storage units during difficult situations like divorces and estate settlements. He met us at the storage facility the next afternoon, a sprawling complex of orange doors and fluorescent lighting on the industrial east side of Portland. Casey had explained our situation in vague terms, enough for Graham to understand we weren't doing anything illegal but also weren't exactly authorized to be there. Unit 217 is at the end of this hallway, Casey said, checking the address she'd pulled from Ryan's financial records. Graham carried a small toolkit and walked with the casual confidence of someone who'd done this hundreds of times before. The unit was medium-sized, maybe 10 feet by 10 feet, with a standard padlock securing the rolling door. Graham examined it briefly, selected a tool from his kit, and had it open within 30 seconds. He stepped back and gestured for us to proceed. I'll wait here and keep watch. You've got about 20 minutes before the office staff does their afternoon rounds. Make it quick. Casey rolled up the door and we both stood staring into the cramped space. Metal shelving lined 2 walls, packed with plastic storage bins labeled with years and cryptic abbreviations. A garment rack held multiple sets of clothes, business casual outfits in Ryan's size. There was a small filing cabinet in the corner and several boxes stacked haphazardly near the back. We started with the labeled bins. Casey pulled down one marked Personal Effects 2022 and opened it carefully. Inside were birthday cards, anniversary cards, Valentines. She pulled one out and opened it. The message inside was in Ryan's handwriting, addressed to someone named Bethany with affectionate language that mirrored what he'd written to me over the years. Who's Bethany? I asked, already knowing the answer would complicate everything further. Casey was already on her phone, fingers flying across the screen. Bethany Morrison. Used to work at Tech Vision Solutions in Human Resources. Left the company 18 months ago according to LinkedIn. Currently works for a startup in Seattle. Did Ryan date her too? Casey pulled out more cards from the bin, each one addressed to Bethany and dated across a span of 2 years. They overlapped with both your relationship and Vanessa's marriage. There were at least 3 of you simultaneously. The revelation should have shocked me, but instead I felt a strange detachment, like I was observing someone else's life rather than living through my own disaster. Ryan hadn't just maintained 2 relationships. He'd been running what amounted to a relationship empire, juggling multiple women with the organizational skills of a project manager coordinating complex initiatives. We kept digging. Another bin held gifts that had apparently never been given, still in their original packaging with receipts attached. Jewelry, perfume, handbags, all purchased at different times with different credit cards. Ryan had been stockpiling presents, probably buying them in bulk during sales and distributing them to various women as needed. The filing cabinet contained documents that Casey photographed methodically. Bank statements for accounts we hadn't discovered yet. Copies of lease agreements for apartments in other cities. Travel itineraries that didn't match anything Ryan had told me about his work schedule. Phone bills showing multiple devices registered to his name. He had burner phones, Casey said, examining the bills. At least 3 of them active at the same time. That's how he managed communication with multiple people without risking crossed messages or accidentally sending something to the wrong person. The garment rack held clothes in different styles, allowing Ryan to present different versions of himself depending on which relationship he was inhabiting. Business professional suits. Casual weekend wear. Athletic gear. Even a tuxedo with the rental tag still attached, dated from 6 months ago for an event I knew nothing about. The boxes in the back contained photo albums that felt like archaeological artifacts from other people's lives. Ryan with Bethany at what looked like a company retreat. Ryan with a redhead I didn't recognize at a beach somewhere tropical. Ryan with an Asian woman at a ski resort. Each album was carefully organized with dates and locations noted, like he was documenting his conquests or maintaining records for some purpose we couldn't fathom. How many women has he done this to? I asked, sitting down hard on the concrete floor of the storage unit. Based on what we're seeing here, at least 5 that he's documented. Casey continued photographing everything. Could be more that he didn't keep records of, or relationships that didn't last long enough to warrant storage space in his archive of deception. 5 minutes left, Graham called from his position near the hallway entrance. Wrap it up. We quickly repacked everything exactly as we'd found it, trying to leave no evidence of our intrusion. Casey had taken hundreds of photos documenting the contents, enough to piece together a comprehensive picture of Ryan's activities over the past several years. As Graham locked the unit behind us, I felt the weight of what we discovered settling over me like a physical burden. We need to tell Vanessa, I said once we were back in Casey's car. She deserves to know it wasn't just me. That he's been doing this to multiple women for years. Agreed. Casey started the engine. But we need to be strategic about how we reveal this information. Vanessa is already processing the shock of discovering you. Adding 3 or 4 more women might be too much all at once. She's stronger than you think. I remembered the cold determination in Vanessa's eyes during our meeting at the cafe. She's not going to fall apart. She's going to get angry and channel that anger into action. Casey called Vanessa while driving, putting the phone on speaker so I could participate in the conversation. Vanessa answered immediately, her voice tense with anticipation. We found something. Casey's tone was serious. Ryan has a storage unit. We got inside this afternoon and what we discovered changes the scope of everything. There was silence on the other end, then Vanessa's voice came back carefully controlled. How bad is it? There are at least 3 other women besides Lauren. Documented relationships spanning the past 5 years. Photos, cards, gifts, records of everything. He's been running what amounts to a systematic operation targeting multiple women simultaneously. The silence stretched longer this time. When Vanessa spoke again, her voice held a quality I hadn't heard before, something hard and dangerous beneath the surface composure. Send me everything. Every photo, every document, every piece of evidence you found. I want to see the full extent of what my husband has been doing. Casey pulled over into a parking lot and began uploading the photos to a secure shared folder. While the files transferred, Vanessa spoke again. I did some investigating of my own today. Talked to his mother under the guise of planning a surprise party for Ryan. Asked casual questions about his past relationships and college years. His mother mentioned several serious girlfriends he'd had over the years, including one he dated all through senior year of college. I looked her up. She's married now, living in California. I sent her a careful message this morning introducing myself and asking if she'd be willing to chat about her time knowing Ryan. Did she respond? I asked. She called me within an hour. Vanessa's voice carried grim satisfaction. Turns out Ryan cheated on her throughout their entire relationship. She discovered it right before graduation when two other women contacted her independently, both thinking they were Ryan's exclusive girlfriend. She broke up with him publicly at a party, humiliated him in front of all their friends. She thought she was warning future women by making the breakup dramatic and public. Obviously that didn't work. He just got better at hiding his behavior. Casey finished uploading the photos and sent Vanessa the folder link. So this is a pattern that goes back at least to college. He's been doing this for over a decade, refining his technique and getting more sophisticated about covering his tracks. My phone buzzed with a message from Ryan. I'd been ignoring his increasingly frequent texts all day, but this one had a different tone that made me pause. Lauren, I need you to know that whatever you think you know, it's not the whole story. People are probably telling you things about me that aren't true. I can explain everything if you just give me a chance. Please don't throw away 3 years based on gossip and misunderstandings. The gaslighting was blatant now. He knew something was happening, could sense his control slipping, and was preemptively trying to discredit any information I might receive. The fact that he was using such obvious manipulation tactics suggested he was more rattled than his carefully worded messages let on. He just texted me something similar, Vanessa said. Claiming his coworkers have been spreading rumors about him and asking me not to believe office gossip. He's in defensive mode, which means he knows we're onto something even if he doesn't know exactly what we've discovered. Good, Casey said. Let him panic. Panicked people make mistakes and we need him to make a big enough mistake that there's no way for him to talk his way out of this situation. We spent the next 2 hours parked in that lot, Vanessa on speaker phone while Casey and I sat in the car, all three of us going through the storage unit photos and piecing together a timeline of Ryan's deceptions. The picture that emerged was of a man who viewed relationships as a game to be won through strategic manipulation. He targeted women who were professionally successful but personally vulnerable, people who were focused on their careers and wouldn't demand constant attention. He exploited their independence and busy schedules to create space for multiple simultaneous relationships. He's a predator, Vanessa said flatly. Not in the criminal sense maybe, but definitely in the emotional sense. He identifies targets, assesses their weaknesses, and constructs whatever version of himself will be most appealing to each specific person. With you, Lauren, he presented himself as the ambitious career man who valued independence and personal space. With me, he's the devoted husband working hard to build our future and start a family. He customizes his performance based on what each woman needs to see. The clinical accuracy of her assessment was chilling. Ryan wasn't just a cheater or a liar. He was someone who studied human behavior and exploited it systematically. The storage unit wasn't just a place to hide evidence. It was an archive of his successes, a trophy collection celebrating his ability to deceive multiple intelligent women simultaneously. We need to find the other women, I said. Bethany and whoever else we can identify from those photos. They deserve to know what happened to them, and we need their stories to establish the full pattern of his behavior. Vanessa agreed immediately. I'll start reaching out tomorrow. I can use my position as his wife to establish credibility. Women are more likely to talk to the legal spouse than to another girlfriend. No offense, Lauren. None taken. She was right. Vanessa had legitimacy in this investigation that I lacked. She was the primary victim in conventional terms, which gave her authority to question other women about their experiences with our shared predator. Casey pulled up LinkedIn profiles for the women we'd identified from the storage unit photos. Bethany Morrison in Seattle. Claire Donovan, the redhead, living in Austin. An Asian woman named Lily Chong who worked in finance in San Francisco. Each of them professional, attractive, accomplished. Each of them exactly the type Ryan seemed to target. I'll compile full dossiers on each of them, Casey said. Current contact information, employment details, social media profiles. Enough information for Vanessa to approach them credibly without seeming like a stalker. We'll present ourselves as women trying to understand what happened and offering support rather than looking for drama or revenge. Though revenge doesn't sound terrible right about now, Vanessa muttered. I heard ice clinking in a glass on her end of the phone. I'm drinking wine at 3 in the afternoon and looking at photos of my husband with at least 4 other women. I think I'm entitled to some revenge fantasies. We all are, I agreed. But Casey's right that we need to be strategic. Public humiliation might feel good in the moment, but it won't protect us legally or financially. We need to think about practical outcomes. Divorce proceedings for you. Closure and moving on for me. Justice in whatever form that takes. I've already consulted with a divorce attorney, Vanessa said. Called her this morning before I even met with you at the cafe. I'm not planning to stay married to Ryan regardless of what we discover from this point forward. But my attorney advised documenting everything possible because Oregon is a no-fault divorce state. Evidence of infidelity doesn't impact asset division, but evidence of financial deception absolutely does. If Ryan has been hiding money or running up secret debts, that changes how our marital assets get split. Casey's attention sharpened. That's smart. I'll dig deeper into his financial records. If there are hidden accounts or unreported income or debt he's concealed, we'll find it. And if any of it can be tied to his relationship deceptions, that strengthens Vanessa's position in divorce proceedings. My phone buzzed again. Nina sending a message asking how I was doing and whether I needed anything. I'd forgotten that the rest of the world was continuing normally while my life imploded. I typed back a quick response assuring her I was okay and promising to fill her in soon. Do you have support systems? Vanessa asked, somehow intuiting my emotional state despite not being able to see my face. Friends and family who know what's happening and can help you through this? My sister obviously. I gestured at Casey. And my best friend Nina who owns the cafe where we met yesterday. My parents don't know yet because I'm still processing how to explain the situation. They loved Ryan. They were expecting us to get engaged soon. Mine too, Vanessa said quietly. My parents adore Ryan. They've been asking when we're going to give them grandchildren. My mother has a Pinterest board of baby room ideas she's been collecting for the past year. Telling them their son-in-law is a serial cheater who's been deceiving me throughout our entire marriage is going to destroy their image of our family. The ripple effects of Ryan's deceptions extended far beyond just the women he directly manipulated. Parents and siblings and friends who'd invested emotionally in these relationships would all experience their own versions of betrayal and loss. Ryan had contaminated entire social networks with his lies. We should tell our stories publicly, I said, the idea forming as I spoke. Not for revenge, but to warn other women. If Ryan did this to us, he'll do it to whoever comes next. We have a responsibility to make sure his pattern gets interrupted. Vanessa was quiet for a moment, considering. That's risky. Public accusations can backfire. He could claim we're vindictive exes making things up. He could sue for defamation if we're not careful about how we present information. Not if we stick to facts and documentation, Casey countered. We have evidence. Photos, messages, financial records, testimony from multiple women. We're not making accusations. We're sharing our verified experiences. That's protected speech. We continued planning late into the afternoon, developing a multi-pronged strategy that balanced practical concerns with our desire for some form of justice. Vanessa would proceed with her divorce filing, using the evidence we'd gathered to protect her financial interests. I would formally end my relationship with Ryan in a way that made clear I knew about his deceptions and wouldn't be manipulated into silence. Casey would continue investigating, ensuring we had comprehensive documentation of everything Ryan had done. And we'd find the other women. We'd reach out to Bethany and Claire and Lily and anyone else we could identify. We'd offer them the truth about what had happened and the opportunity to add their voices to ours. Not to destroy Ryan publicly, though that might be a side effect, but to create a record that would follow him and make it harder for him to victimize anyone else. As the sun began setting and we finally ended our marathon planning session, I felt something shift inside me. The numbness and shock were giving way to clarity and purpose. Ryan had stolen 3 years of my life through deliberate fraud. I couldn't get that time back, but I could make sure his actions had consequences. I could transform from victim into someone who fought back. Casey drove us home through evening traffic while I stared out the window at the city lights beginning to glow. Somewhere out there, Ryan was probably at Vanessa's house or maybe at his fake apartment, still believing he could manage this situation through more lies and careful manipulation. He didn't know we'd found his storage unit. He didn't know we'd connected with each other and were working together. He didn't know we'd identified other victims and were planning to contact them. He was about to find out that the women he'd underestimated were more dangerous than he'd ever imagined. And unlike his carefully orchestrated deceptions, our confrontation wouldn't follow any script he could prepare for. We were writing new rules for this game, and Ryan Cooper was going to learn that some lies carry consequences no amount of manipulation can avoid. The confrontation happened on a Wednesday evening exactly 1 week after I'd walked into that gala and discovered the truth. We'd spent 7 days gathering evidence, contacting other women, and building an unshakable case against Ryan Cooper. Now Vanessa, Casey, and I sat in Vanessa's living room waiting for Ryan to come home, preparing to dismantle his entire constructed reality. The house was beautiful in that carefully curated way that suggested professional interior design consultation. Soft gray walls, modern furniture, family photos strategically placed on shelves. A dog bed in the corner where Bentley presumably slept, though Vanessa had sent him to stay with her parents for the evening. Everything looked like the perfect marriage, which I supposed had been the point all along. Vanessa sat in an armchair facing the front door, her posture rigid with controlled tension. Casey and I flanked her on the couch, 3 women united in purpose and fury. On the coffee table between us sat printed copies of everything we'd discovered. Bank statements, storage unit photos, messages from other women who'd responded to Vanessa's outreach. The evidence was organized in neat folders, each one representing a different aspect of Ryan's systematic deception. Bethany Morrison had responded within hours of Vanessa's initial contact. She'd been devastated to learn that her 2-year relationship with Ryan had overlapped with his marriage and multiple other relationships. She'd provided text messages, emails, and photos that filled in gaps in our timeline. Bethany thought Ryan was single and traveling frequently for legitimate work reasons. When she'd pushed for more commitment after 2 years together, Ryan had suddenly become distant and eventually ghosted her completely. She'd spent months wondering what she'd done wrong, never suspecting she'd been one of many women in Ryan's rotation. Claire Donovan in Austin had been harder to reach, but when Vanessa finally connected with her, the story was grimly familiar. 18 months with Ryan during which he'd visited Austin monthly for what he'd claimed were client meetings. He'd told Claire he was separated from his wife and waiting for the divorce to finalize. Claire had believed him, had fallen in love with the future he described, and had been crushed when he'd abruptly ended things with a text message claiming his ex-wife was causing legal complications that made continuing their relationship impossible. Lily Chong had actually laughed when Vanessa called her. Not from humor, but from bitter recognition. She'd suspected Ryan was lying about aspects of his life during their brief 6-month involvement. When she'd hired a private investigator to verify his claims about being divorced, the investigator had discovered the active marriage to Vanessa. Lily had confronted Ryan, who'd spun an elaborate story about the marriage being a green card arrangement helping a friend. Lily hadn't believed him and had ended things immediately, but she'd never reported his deceptions because she'd felt foolish for having been involved with him at all. Each woman's story added texture and detail to the portrait of Ryan as a systematic predator. He'd refined his approach over years, learning what worked and what didn't, adapting his tactics based on each woman's particular vulnerabilities. With me, he'd emphasized shared interests and intellectual compatibility. With Vanessa, he'd played the devoted husband building toward family and stability. With Bethany, he'd been the ambitious executive looking for a partner who understood career demands. With Claire, he'd been the wounded man escaping a failed marriage. With Lily, he'd been the adventurous traveler seeking spontaneity and excitement. He'd been whoever each woman needed him to be, performing different versions of himself with the skill of a professional actor. The storage unit had been his costume department and archive, a physical manifestation of his fractured identity and deliberate duplicity. We heard his car pull into the driveway at exactly 6:30. Ryan was nothing if not punctual, his schedule managed with the precision necessary to maintain multiple simultaneous relationships. Vanessa took a deep breath and straightened in her chair. Casey reached over and squeezed my hand briefly, a gesture of solidarity and support. The front door opened and Ryan walked in carrying takeout bags from the Thai restaurant down the street. He was talking before he even looked up, his voice carrying the casual affection of routine domesticity. Traffic was terrible tonight. I got your usual plus some spring rolls because I know you've been craving them. He finally looked into the living room and stopped dead, the bags dangling from his hands as he registered the scene before him. 3 women sitting in judgment, folders of evidence arranged like exhibits in a courtroom, the atmosphere thick with tension and barely suppressed rage. His face went through a remarkable transformation. Confusion gave way to recognition as he identified me sitting next to his wife. Recognition became calculation as his brain worked frantically to construct some explanation that might salvage the situation. Calculation flickered toward panic before settling into a mask of bewildered innocence. Lauren? What are you doing here? He set the takeout bags on the entry table, his movements careful and controlled. Vanessa, what's going on? Sit down, Ryan. Vanessa's voice was ice, completely devoid of the warmth I'd heard in our previous conversations. We have quite a lot to discuss and I'd prefer you weren't standing over us during this conversation. He moved slowly into the living room, choosing a chair that positioned him across from all 3 of us. His eyes darted between our faces, still trying to assess the situation and formulate his approach. I could almost see the gears turning as he searched for the right lie. I don't understand what's happening right now. Ryan's tone was cautious, probing. Did you 2 somehow meet? Because I can explain the situation with Lauren. It's complicated but not what it probably looks like. Please don't insult our intelligence by lying more than you already have. Vanessa leaned forward slightly. We know everything, Ryan. Not just about Lauren, but about Bethany, Claire, Lily, and whoever else you've been deceiving over the past 5 years. We've seen your storage unit. We've read your messages. We've talked to the other women. We have documentation of every lie you've told and every life you've damaged. The color drained from Ryan's face as the magnitude of his exposure became clear. He opened his mouth, closed it, then tried again. You went through my storage unit? That's a violation of privacy. You had no right to access my personal property. Casey laughed, a sharp sound without humor. You're seriously trying to claim privacy rights? You've been committing identity fraud, financial deception, and emotional abuse against multiple women for years. You've forfeited any reasonable expectation of privacy when your private property contains evidence of systematic criminal behavior. Criminal behavior? Ryan's voice pitched higher, panic breaking through his composure. I haven't committed any crimes. I may have made some relationship mistakes, but that's not illegal. Vanessa opened one of the folders and pulled out several documents. Financial fraud is illegal. Using marital assets to fund extramarital affairs without your spouse's knowledge constitutes financial deception that impacts divorce proceedings. Identity theft using credit cards in my name without authorization. Possible tax fraud if you've been hiding income or claiming false deductions. Should I continue? Ryan's hands gripped the arms of his chair, knuckles white with tension. Any financial decisions I made were to benefit our household. Investments in our future that required short-term discretion. Buying jewelry for your girlfriends was investing in our future? Vanessa's voice remained deadly calm. Taking secret trips and charging them to accounts you told me were for business expenses? Renting an apartment as a cover story while you maintained multiple simultaneous relationships? Try again, Ryan. He shifted tactics, turning his attention to me with an expression of wounded betrayal. Lauren, you have to understand. What Vanessa and I have is complicated. Our marriage has been over for years. We're only staying together for financial reasons and family expectations. What we had together was real. That was genuine. The audacity of trying to manipulate me even now, surrounded by undeniable evidence of his systemic lying, was almost impressive. I met his eyes and kept my voice steady. You told me your mother was too ill to travel from Boston. She lives 20 minutes from this house and has Sunday dinner here twice a month. You told me you wanted to wait to discuss children because of our careers. You'd been going to fertility appointments with Vanessa trying to get her pregnant. You told me the necklace you gave me was one of a kind. You bought the same necklace for at least 3 other women. Every single thing you said to me was a calculated lie. There was nothing real about what we had because you are fundamentally incapable of being real with anyone. Ryan's mask slipped further, desperation replacing calculated innocence. Okay, I made mistakes. I handled things badly. But can we talk about this privately? Without an audience? This is between us as couples. We can work through this. There is no us, I said. There never was. Just you performing a role you thought I wanted to see while you performed different roles for different women depending on what each of us needed. You're not a person, Ryan. You're a collection of performances with nothing authentic underneath. Vanessa stood and walked to where Ryan sat, looking down at him with an expression of such profound contempt that he actually flinched. Tomorrow morning I'm filing for divorce. My attorney has copies of everything we've discovered. You'll be served papers at your office because I won't allow you back in this house after tonight. You have 2 hours to pack essential belongings. Anything you leave behind will be inventoried and addressed during property division proceedings. You can't kick me out of my own house, Ryan protested, but his voice lacked conviction. It's not your house. Vanessa pulled out another document. The down payment came entirely from my inheritance. The mortgage is in my name because your credit score wasn't high enough 3 years ago to qualify, remember? You have no legal claim to this property. And even if you did, I have a restraining order being processed based on your pattern of deceptive and controlling behavior. You'll be legally barred from returning here pending the divorce proceedings. Ryan turned to Casey, apparently hoping she might be sympathetic. You're her sister, right? Can you talk some sense into Lauren? This is all a misunderstanding that's gotten blown out of proportion. Casey's smile was predatory. I'm the one who found your storage unit. I'm the one who tracked down your burner phone records. I'm the one who compiled the financial evidence showing you've been systematically defrauding my sister and multiple other women. The only thing I'm going to talk sense about is making sure you face actual consequences for what you've done. Ryan stood abruptly, agitation overtaking his attempts at control. This is insane. You're all acting like I'm some kind of monster when all I did was care about multiple people. Maybe I have a bigger capacity for love than conventional people. Maybe I was just trying to make everyone happy. By lying to everyone constantly? I stood too, done with sitting while he tried to reframe systematic abuse as unconventional love. By stealing time and money and emotional energy from women who trusted you? By constructing elaborate false identities and maintaining them for years? That's not love, Ryan. That's pathological manipulation. He wheeled on me, finally allowing anger to break through. You know what? Maybe you're right. Maybe I did lie to you. But you were easy to lie to, Lauren. You were so desperate for a relationship that you believed everything I said without question. You were convenient because you never demanded too much, never pushed for more commitment, never challenged my obvious inconsistencies. You made it easy for me. The attempt to wound me with harsh truth might have worked a week ago. Now it just sounded pathetic. You're right. I did believe you. Because normal people don't assume the person they love is running a systematic deception operation. That's not a character flaw on my part. That's just what trust looks like. But you've never actually trusted anyone, have you? Because you're not capable of the vulnerability that real trust requires. Vanessa stepped between us, redirecting Ryan's attention. You need to start packing. Casey will supervise to make sure you only take what's legitimately yours. Lauren and I will be in the kitchen. You have 2 hours, then you leave. Where am I supposed to go? For the first time, Ryan sounded genuinely lost, his carefully constructed world collapsing faster than he could process. That's not our problem anymore, Vanessa said. You've spent years maintaining multiple residences and identities. I'm sure you'll figure something out. Casey followed Ryan upstairs while Vanessa and I retreated to the kitchen. We could hear drawers opening and closing, Ryan moving around the bedroom with Casey's presence ensuring he didn't take anything that belonged to Vanessa or destroy evidence out of spite. "How do you feel?" I asked Vanessa as she poured us both glasses of wine. "Lighter than I've felt in years, actually." She took a long drink. "I've been feeling crazy for months. Little inconsistencies that didn't quite add up. Times when Ryan's stories didn't match. I'd convinced myself I was being paranoid or controlling, that I needed to trust my husband more. Finding out I was right all along is validating even though the truth is horrible. I understand that completely. The gaslighting might have been worse than the cheating in some ways. Being made to feel like your reasonable doubts are character flaws." We sat in her kitchen drinking wine and listening to Ryan pack upstairs, two women who'd been pitted against each other by a man's lies now bonded through shared trauma and survival. The solidarity was unexpected but powerful. We'd both loved different versions of the same fictional person, and now we were both free of him. An hour and 40 minutes later, Casey came downstairs with a satisfied expression. "He's packed 2 suitcases and loaded his car. I took photos of everything he's removing so there's documentation. He tried to take some of Vanessa's jewelry claiming you'd given it to him to give to her, but I shut that down quickly." "Thank you," Vanessa said. "For everything. For helping Lauren and for helping me see who I actually married." Ryan appeared in the kitchen doorway, suitcases in hand. He looked diminished somehow, smaller than the confident man who'd walked in 2 hours ago. His eyes were red-rimmed, whether from tears or anger I couldn't tell. "I need to say something before I go." His voice was hoarse. "I know you all think I'm some kind of monster, but I never meant to hurt anyone. I just wanted to make people happy." "Is that really so terrible?" "Yes," I said simply. "When you make people happy through lies, you're not actually making them happy. You're constructing false realities that will eventually collapse and cause even more pain than if you'd been honest from the start. Every good moment we shared was tainted by your deception. Every happy memory is now evidence of how thoroughly you fooled us. That's not making anyone happy. That's stealing their ability to consent to the relationship they're actually in." Ryan looked at Vanessa. "Are we really done? After 4 years of marriage, you're just throwing everything away because I made some mistakes?" "I'm not throwing anything away," Vanessa replied. "You already destroyed our marriage. I'm just acknowledging that reality and moving forward. Which is something you've never been capable of. You don't move forward, Ryan. You just add more layers to your lies until the whole structure collapses." He turned to leave, then paused at the doorway. "You'll regret this. All of you. When you're alone and remember the good times we had, you'll wish you'd been willing to forgive and move past this." "The only thing I'll regret," I said, "is not trusting my instincts sooner. Every time something felt off and I rationalized it away, I was ignoring my own wisdom. I won't make that mistake again." Ryan left without another word. We heard his car start and pull away, the sound of the engine fading into the neighborhood's evening quiet. The three of us stood in Vanessa's kitchen in silence for a long moment, processing the finality of what had just happened. Vanessa broke the silence with a shaky laugh. "I just kicked my husband out of the house. Our house. My house. I actually did it." "You were amazing," Casey said. Cold and factual and completely in control. "He tried every manipulation tactic in his playbook and none of them worked because you didn't give him any emotional leverage to exploit. Years of business negotiations prepared me well for dealing with manipulative men," Vanessa said. "Though I never expected I'd need to use those skills on my own husband." We cleaned up the folders and documents, carefully filing everything for the legal proceedings ahead. Vanessa would need copies for her divorce attorney. I would need copies for closure and potentially for a civil case if we decided to pursue financial damages. The other women we'd contacted would get copies so they could understand what had happened to them and find whatever healing came from knowledge and solidarity. Over the following weeks, the full consequences of Ryan's exposure rippled outward. His employer, Tech Vision Solutions, launched an internal investigation after receiving anonymous reports about his behavior. They discovered he'd been falsifying expense reports to cover costs related to his multiple relationships. Legitimate business dinners had been inflated to include additional meals with various girlfriends. Hotel rooms booked for fake conferences had actually been romantic getaways charged to the company. Ryan was terminated for fraud and misuse of corporate resources. The professional reputation he'd cultivated so carefully disintegrated as word spread through Portland's interconnected tech community. Former coworkers who'd thought Ryan was a dedicated family man learned about his double life. Clients who'd trusted him discovered they'd been working with someone fundamentally dishonest. Professional networking groups quietly removed him from membership rosters, not wanting to be associated with someone whose name had become synonymous with deception. Vanessa's divorce proceedings moved forward with the efficiency that came from having overwhelming documentation. Ryan initially tried to contest the terms, claiming he deserved half the house value and ongoing spousal support. His attorney abandoned those arguments quickly once presented with evidence of financial fraud and systematic deception. The final settlement left Vanessa with the house, most of their shared assets, and a clean break from Ryan's lingering presence in her life. I focused on my own healing process, working with a therapist who specialized in recovering from manipulative relationships. Dr. Sarah Chen helped me understand that being deceived didn't reflect poorly on my judgment or character. People who commit systematic fraud are skilled at deception. Their success doesn't mean their victims are foolish. It means the perpetrator invested significant time and energy into crafting believable lies. The hardest part wasn't anger at Ryan, which burned hot and clean and eventually faded. The hardest part was learning to trust my own perceptions again. Every relationship decision felt fraught with potential deception. Every new person I met triggered suspicion and doubt. Dr. Chen helped me recognize the difference between reasonable caution and allowing Ryan's actions to control my future relationships. Casey became something of an amateur expert in identifying relationship fraud patterns. She compiled our experience and the experiences of the other women into a comprehensive guide about recognizing systematic deception in intimate relationships. The guide circulated through online communities focused on relationship recovery and emotional abuse awareness. Multiple women reached out with their own stories of partners who'd maintained double lives, grateful for language to describe what had happened to them and strategies for moving forward. 6 months after the confrontation, I received an unexpected message from Tyler Morrison, the Tech Vision coworker Casey had contacted during our initial investigation. Tyler had felt uncomfortable about Ryan's behavior for years but hadn't known how to articulate his concerns or whether intervening was appropriate. He apologized for not speaking up sooner and offered to share his observations about Ryan's deceptive patterns if it would help with our healing process. Tyler and I met for coffee at a neutral location. He described watching Ryan cycle through different personality presentations at work depending on which colleague he was interacting with. Ryan had been charming with executives, competitive with peers, and subtly undermining with subordinates he perceived as threats. The workplace manipulation mirrored his relationship manipulation, just applied to different contexts and goals. The conversation with Tyler helped me understand that Ryan's deception wasn't personal even though it had felt intensely personal. He deceived everyone in his life as a fundamental operating strategy, not because of any specific inadequacy in the people he targeted. Understanding that distinction helped me release the last remnants of self-blame I'd been carrying. Vanessa and I became unlikely friends, bonded through shared trauma but also through genuine compatibility. We met monthly for dinner, comparing notes on our healing processes and celebrating small victories. When Vanessa went on her first post-divorce date, I helped her prepare and demanded a full debrief afterward. When I finally felt ready to try dating again, Vanessa vetted potential matches with thorough background checks that would have made Casey proud. The other women from Ryan's past became part of our extended support network. Bethany joined our monthly dinners when she visited Portland for work. Claire and I exchanged long emails about rebuilding trust and learning to recognize red flags. Lily sent care packages and words of encouragement during difficult moments. We'd all been isolated victims of the same predator. Together we became a community of survivors who refused to let one man's actions define our capacity for connection and trust. A year after discovering the truth, I was offered a promotion at my design firm that would involve relocating to Seattle. The opportunity felt like a clean break, a chance to build a new life in a city without memories of Ryan contaminating familiar locations. I discussed the decision with my therapist, my sister, Vanessa, and Nina. Everyone supported whatever choice felt right for my healing and future. I decided to take the promotion and move. Not because I was running from Portland, but because I was running towards something new. The city had been mine before Ryan, and it would be there if I ever wanted to return. But Seattle represented possibility and growth untethered from the past 3 years of deception. My going-away party at Nina's Cafe brought together everyone who'd supported me through the aftermath of discovery. Casey gave a toast about strength and resilience that made everyone cry. Vanessa presented me with a gift, a beautiful journal with the inscription, "For writing your own story," embossed on the cover. Nina closed the cafe early so we could celebrate without interruption, surrounding me with people who'd chosen to support my truth rather than enabling Ryan's lies. During the party, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something made me check. The message was from Ryan. "I saw you're moving to Seattle. I want you to know I'm sorry for everything. I've been working on myself and understanding why I made the choices I made. I'm in therapy and learning about attachment disorders and fear of intimacy. Maybe someday you'll be able to forgive me. I hope you find happiness." I showed the message to Casey, who rolled her eyes. Classic narcissist apology. It's all about him and his growth journey, not about the actual harm he caused. He wants credit for going to therapy without taking real responsibility for his actions. Should I respond? I asked. Only if you want to. But remember that responding gives him access to your attention and energy. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is nothing at all. I thought about it for a moment, then deleted the message without responding. Ryan had taken enough of my time and emotional energy. He wasn't entitled to more just because he'd decided to perform personal growth. His healing journey was his own to navigate. Mine didn't require forgiving him or acknowledging his attempts at redemption. The move to Seattle happened smoothly. My new apartment had large windows overlooking Puget Sound, filling the space with natural light that felt cleansing and new. I bought furniture without memories attached, decorated with art that reflected my tastes rather than compromising with a partner's preferences. The space was entirely mine in a way my Portland apartment never could be after Ryan had occupied it so thoroughly. Work at the Seattle office was challenging and engaging, pushing me to develop new skills and take on increasingly complex projects. My coworkers knew nothing about my history with Ryan unless I chose to share it, which meant I could be just Lauren the talented designer rather than Lauren who'd been deceived for 3 years. The professional fresh start helped me rebuild confidence that had been shaken by discovering how thoroughly I'd been manipulated. I started dating cautiously, armed with knowledge about red flags and healthy relationship patterns. The first few attempts were awkward as I navigated my own suspicion and tendency to interrogate potential partners about inconsistencies in their stories. But gradually I learned to balance appropriate caution with openness to genuine connection. 2 years after leaving Portland, I met someone at a professional conference who seemed promising. His name was Daniel, and he was a software engineer with an earnest manner and transparent communication style that felt radically different from Ryan's calculated charm. Daniel had been married before and divorced amicably when he and his ex-wife realized they wanted different futures. He spoke openly about his past, introduced me to his friends and family early in our relationship, and showed me his actual apartment without hesitation. The relationship progressed slowly as I tested whether his consistency was genuine or just better performed deception. Daniel was patient with my caution, understanding when I explained my history without taking my trust issues personally. When I had moments of panic about whether he might be lying about fundamental aspects of his life, he calmly provided whatever documentation I needed to feel secure. He never made me feel crazy for needing verification. One evening about 6 months into our relationship, Daniel and I were having dinner at his apartment when he said something that stopped me mid-bite. "I want you to know that I understand if you never fully trust me. Given what you went through with Ryan, it would be reasonable for you to always maintain some level of protective skepticism. But I also want you to know that I'm committed to being someone worthy of trust, even if you're never able to give it completely." The statement was so honest and understanding that I felt tears welling up. This was what healthy looked like. Not demanding trust as an entitlement, but recognizing that trust was earned through consistent behavior over time. Daniel wasn't offended by my wariness. He accepted it as a natural consequence of my past trauma and committed to demonstrating trustworthiness regardless of whether I reciprocated immediately. "I'm working on it," I told him. Trusting again. "It's harder than I expected, but I want to be able to give you the benefit of the doubt without constantly investigating." "Take your time." Daniel reached across the table and took my hand. "We're building something together and that takes time. I'm not going anywhere." 3 years after discovering Ryan's betrayal, I felt genuinely happy in a way I hadn't since before meeting him. My career was thriving. My relationship with Daniel was healthy and growing. My friendship with Vanessa remained strong despite the distance. Casey visited regularly, proud of how I'd rebuilt my life from the rubble of Ryan's destruction. I heard through mutual acquaintances that Ryan had moved to California and was working in sales for a different tech company. He'd apparently learned nothing from the consequences of his exposure, already dating multiple women simultaneously and using the same deceptive tactics that had worked so well in Portland. Some people never changed, never learned, never developed the capacity for genuine connection they'd been mimicking their entire lives. But Ryan's continued dysfunction wasn't my problem anymore. He was a cautionary tale I shared when appropriate, a lesson about trusting instincts and requiring consistency between words and actions. His impact on my life had been profound, but it didn't define my future. I'd survived his betrayal and built something stronger from the experience. The story I tell now isn't about being a victim of systematic deception. It's about becoming someone who survived, healed, and eventually thrived. It's about finding community with other women who'd experienced similar betrayals and supporting each other through recovery. It's about learning to trust again without being naive, to be cautious without being cynical, to protect myself without closing off from genuine connection. Ryan thought he could steal years of my life through calculated lies. What he actually did was teach me about my own strength, resilience, and capacity for growth. The woman I became after discovering his betrayal was wiser, more discerning, and more intentional about the relationships I allowed into my life. I wouldn't have chosen this path, but having walked it, I recognized the value of what I'd learned along the way. On the 3rd anniversary of that night at the gala, Daniel and I were walking through Pike Place Market when my phone buzzed with a message from Vanessa. She'd gotten engaged to someone she'd met through a friend, a kind man who worked as a high school teacher and apparently had no capacity for deception whatsoever. The photo she sent showed her beaming with genuine joy, wearing a simple engagement ring and standing next to someone whose smile matched hers in openness and happiness. I showed the photo to Daniel, feeling tears of joy for my friend who'd found her own path to healing and new love. "That's wonderful," Daniel said. "She deserves that happiness after everything she went through." "We all do," I replied, looking at the man beside me who'd proven through years of consistent behavior that not everyone was Ryan. Some people actually were who they claimed to be, actually meant what they said, actually showed up as authentic versions of themselves rather than performing calculated roles. The market bustled around us with tourists and locals, everyone carrying on with their own complicated lives and relationship dramas. Somewhere out there, Ryan was probably deceiving new women with the same tactics he'd used on us. But Vanessa had found happiness. I'd found healing and healthy love. The other women from Ryan's past had built new lives untainted by his manipulation. We'd all survived. More than that, we'd all grown beyond the damage he'd attempted to inflict. Our stories didn't end with betrayal and destruction. They continued into recovery, strength, and joy we'd fought hard to reclaim. I'd thought I was his only girlfriend once. I'd been wrong about that and so much else. But I'd been right about one thing that mattered more than any of Ryan's lies. I deserved better than what he'd offered. We all did. And we'd all found it by refusing to let his deception define our capacity for future connection. That was the real victory. Not revenge or public humiliation or watching Ryan face consequences, though those had their place. The real victory was reclaiming our lives and building futures that honored our worth. Ryan Cooper had stolen time we couldn't recover. But he couldn't steal our futures. Those belonged to us, and we were writing them with intention, wisdom, and hard-won understanding about what real love actually looked like. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.